Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Talking Acquisition. This is the weekly high-energy, high-informative, slightly opinionated view on all things acquisition, procurement, and government contracting related. This is the place where the contracting and acquisition communities and our industry partners connect, talk, listen, and learn from each other. My name is William Randolph, and I am your host. I'd like to introduce my co-host, my colleague, my partner, my friend, Soraya Carrera. Hello, Soraya. How you doing?
Hello, Will. Getting a little tripped up on your words. Now I'm tripping. I'm tripping up on your words there, I see, but it's okay. It's all good. Doing
Absolutely.
Really well. Looking forward to this podcast. We have a special guest today.
We do.
I'm excited. So want me to kick it off with that disclaimer?
Please do. Let's make it happen.
All right, let's go. So our podcast shares information and views on a variety of topics that impact the federal acquisition community. Our goal is to provide thought leadership and perspective, not to criticize, judge, or render political opinions, although this week we may have some. We provide this free service because we are former federal acquisition professionals and leaders. We believe that the creativity, innovation, and effectiveness of our community is unleashed when we share knowledge, information, and learning. We hope you enjoy our podcast, and we welcome the views and comments of our colleagues across the private and public sectors. And now it's my great honor and privilege to introduce our guest for today's podcast. I'll let Will talk about what the topic will be, but I'm going to talk about our guest because he's someone who I know. He's a near and dear friend, someone that I've worked with for many years, met him a little over close to 18 years ago when we stood up the Department of Homeland Security. And Mike Smith, our guest, Michael B. Smith. I like to remind people it's Mike B. Smith. There's a lot of Mike Smiths. I always believed that Mike was making up his name, by the way. He just didn't want me to find them in the directory. That's really why he did that. But anyway, Mike Smith has been in this business probably for as long as I have, right? Close to 40 years. And he's a veteran, former Marine, correct? Did I say that correctly, Mike? And Mike has extensive acquisition and procurement experience. I can talk about my experiences with him. He worked in our Information Technology Acquisition Center when we stood up the Department of Homeland Security. He was one of the leaders there, and subsequently he went over to our strategic sourcing area, and then ultimately ended up being our head of contracting for our classified procurements, or the Office of Selective Acquisitions. But I like to talk, when I talk about Mike, aside from the personal side, which I think he's just got the best sense of humor and just a great personality, and he's wonderful to work with. But I like to think about Mike as one of our strategic leaders. He has a lot of insight and foresight into what we're doing and what are the challenges we confront. Today, Mike is an independent consultant. He has his own company. He's the CEO of Access Government Services, but he's also the executive vice president of GovConRx. And that's extremely important because of the topic we're going to talk about today. So Will, you want to introduce our topic?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So when we think about procurement, acquisitions and procurement, we tend to talk about it in the Holy Trinity. That is price, non-price, which is technical and management capability, and then past performance. What we want to focus on today is that past performance piece. What is it about company past performance that makes the system work? We can't go forward with our current activity without looking backwards to see how her company has shown up in the marketplace and how it is documented in the marketplace. So, Mike, I'd love to just hear your thoughts on your experiences in this space, anything innovative or that you're working on. Just talk to us about past performance and anything that's going on in your world and your space.
Sure, appreciate it, Will, and thank you for that nice introduction, Soraya. It's always a pleasure to be with colleagues and friends such as yourself. So you'll note that Access Government Services as a company focuses on helping companies navigate the complexities of the acquisition process, a lot of what this podcast does for industry and government representatives. But the primary objective is to help enhance the communication between the two parties, because I found that when you enhance the communication and both sides understand each other, the contract outcomes are so much better. And that's how we focus in on this particular topic. At GovConRx, we're a performance management company, bottom line. and we help companies deliver more effectively to the government. And that's why we're so focused on the CPARS process and helping companies communicate more effectively with the government, getting everybody on the same page on both sides, and improving the contract outcomes. And hey, as a result of that, the CPAR score goes up, everybody wins: the government, the company, and the citizens of the United States. And that's all good. And I think that we should focus on that whole concept of who's the winner here. And I think we can all be winners if we do this the right way. So we've been doing a lot of things in the CPAR space. And I'll just start with a topic of CPARs versus PPQs. That's one of those areas that we tend to see a lot of PPQs coming out, past performance questionnaires, right? And so a lot of past performance questionnaires are used in a lot of acquisitions. And I see and I understand why they may be used on a case-by-case basis. But CPARS is the performance record of the federal government, and it is reusable. And it can be used for multiple occasions, where a past performance questionnaire is kind of a one-off thing. And I'll tell you, when I was the program manager for Eagle and FirstSource, when there were similar acquisitions in other agencies going on, I would get inundated with tons and tons of these PPQ requests at one time. Well, I'm going to tell you, I had a day job, so I couldn't just respond to PPQs. So I'll be honest, I focused on responding to the very best contractors and the very worst contractors. And I would respond to those. And so it really does create a drain on the acquisition process. So that's one of the things that we're trying to improve by making this whole CPARS process easier. And one of the things that we've been advocating is the use of contractor self-assessments as a means for improving the effectiveness, the ease of the CPAR process. And you've heard me talk about this before, in that if as a supervisor, it was always beneficial for me to get some feedback from my employee on what their accomplishments were during the course of the year, that would then help me in writing their evaluation for the annual performance review. This is the same concept, just put into a government industry relationship. The contractor has a vested interest in tracking its performance standards, in tracking what it does and how it did what it did. Some of the outside pressures and challenges that the contractor was able to overcome may not even be visible to the government because the contractor overcame that. Wouldn't it be beneficial to tell the government about those stories? Wouldn't it be beneficial to give the government some metrics and some accomplishments that you felt were help the mission forward and help achieve the objectives of the contract? So then the government can use bits and pieces of that particular feedback as a means to move the CPARS process along. CPARS is a burden, I get it, but the benefit to the government as a whole should allow us to be able to use these tools that we have available to get it done quicker.
Hey, Mike, so I appreciate you bringing up the PPQs, because those past performance questionnaires, I can't tell you how many times vendors would call and complain about Mike not filling out. No, just kidding, I'm joking. No, but vendors do call and say, hey, I can't get the COR to fill it out, or I can't get the PM, blah, blah, blah. And what vendors fail to understand, because you look at the world from where you live in, is that along with them, there are 20, 30 other 40, depending on what the bidding process is, other companies submitting PPQs to that COR or that program manager or that contracting officer. The other thing that I didn't like about the PPQs, and one of the things I tried to avoid, is consistency. Because you could get a PPQ one day that says this company is great and wonderful on a particular project. You also get a PPQ for that same project that says that company wasn't so great and wonderful, because it's perspectives, right? Evaluations are based on the perspective of the individual that's filling it out. So I think the self-assessment is a great tool. I 100% agree with you. And what I encourage folks to do in self-assessments, don't just focus on what you did well. Talk to me about what you know you need to improve upon. If you give a really good, honest self-assessment, the likelihood is that that self-assessment will become a part of that record, because that honesty, because look, what I always tell companies and I tell employees and I tell people, if you tell me you were perfect and you did everything right, I'm probably not going to be talking to you much longer. Okay. First, because I know that's baloney. Okay. But more importantly, I want people that know how to overcome obstacles, right? We want folks that know how to take a problem and handle it. If you've never handled a problem before, if you've never overcome an obstacle, if you never had to face a challenge, then how do I know that you can? So to say there and be dishonest and say, oh, I did everything great and wonderful and perfect, I think is dishonest, and it really doesn't help anyone. Over to you, Will.
Yeah, so Mike, I really enjoyed and really liked the connection, the symbolism you made with past performance, CPARs, and performance management of employees. And the point I'm trying to get to is, we used to say all the time in government, if you were just getting feedback on your performance at the mid-year and your final assessment, that was a recipe for disaster. I think the same analogy applies from a CPAR's perspective. The CPARs, those are two memorializing events, but that communication and engagement needs to be happening time and time again, if not monthly, bi-monthly, at least quarterly. That activity needs to be happening. So the concept of performance management, that really resonates with me, because it's really that exchange of information and feedback needs to be happening way more than 2 times a year. Your thoughts?
Absolutely, Will. And I'll get back as well to one of the things Soraya was talking about. The FAR recognizes that there are going to be problems and issues in implementing a contract, right? And it's how well did you resolve those issues?
Right.
How well did you solve those issues? And what was the outcome of your resolution? And I think a lot of this idea of you have to be perfect, nobody's perfect. No contract runs perfect. The only perfect contract is a contract that is in an acquisition plan.
And even that one has a few.
I love it.
Well, you know, like Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until you get hit in the mouth, right?
Yeah.
So every contract, once it starts, when the realities of what you anticipate and what is actually happening on the ground start to come together, then you're going to start having some problems and issues that need to be resolved. And you can resolve issues and resolve them well and have a very good outcome and still get an excellent or very good CPAR rating. So the idea of, you know, coming in and saying you did everything perfect and nothing ever went wrong, that would be a fallacy. And you're absolutely correct. The other piece is this constant or frequent communication back and forth. What we like to advocate for is have an initial discussion at kickoff and ask the contractor should ask the government, what is excellent? What is outstanding? What will exceed your expectation? What would this look like to you? Now, I'll be honest, a lot of times the government is not going to be able to answer that at kickoff. But if you continue to have that conversation, it will evolve, it will present itself. And then the government will be able to articulate this. And then the contractor is going to aim at that target. You know, I'm a military guy, and I can tell you that you're never going to hit a target if you don't know where it is. Right? If you're just shooting in the dark, it's just not going to happen. And so if everybody has the same objective, the government, industry, everybody's working toward the same objective and making the proper adjustments as the situation on the ground changes, then the performance levels are going to be more in alignment with what government's expectation, the contract outcome is going to be better, the mission is going to be served better, and let's face it, the contractor's past performance is going to be higher.
Well, contracts are like any other agreement. It's about relationships, right? And you can't have a relationship if you're not talking to one another, if you're not exchanging ideas and information. I'm a huge advocate of regular recurring meetings, and those meetings should include the contracting officer because they're going to weigh in on performance as well. So it's about the program, the contractor personnel, and the contracting officer all coming together, even if it's a 15-minute session once a month, to just check in. And that's a great opportunity to say, hey, how am I doing? What should I be doing differently? Were you aware that this occurred? Because sometimes what happens with the self-assessment, with the vendor self-assessment, and with those communications is the government gets insight into things that they may not otherwise know, right? They may not know what's going on in the labor market in a particular industry. They may not know that the vendor is having problems on this side of the equation trying to get a particular approval that I have nothing to do with, but that they need to do the job. So it's really important to have those conversations. And what I've found is we all want to make the contract successful, right? When you think about what this business is about, I think, I've said this till I'm blue in the face. Contractors are a partner. They don't take a contract to fail, right? And a lot of them, yes, their incentive is a profit. I'm not going to disagree with that, but that's not the only reason they're there. They're professionals like the rest of us. They take pride in their work. They want to deliver, and they believe in our government. That's why they're working for it. It's not just about the money, because believe you me, let's look at our budget situation right now, right? You can't even get a budget.
Right.
We put the contracts for starch, and don't even get me going off on that time. See, I told you political opinions slip out all the time.
Another show.
But now, especially now that I'm a contractor, right? But my point is that these things are going to happen. And if you have these conversations, if you have this ongoing dialogue, what happens is, number one, there's no surprises at the end. Number two, you work together to resolve issues. And I think the most important thing that comes out of this is you will achieve the end objective of the contract, because you will find a way to help each other. Notice I said help each other solve the problems, because sometimes the contractor can't solve the problem by themselves. And sometimes we can't solve the problem by ourselves.
Yeah. So Soraya, I want to tie this conversation back to something you mentioned maybe a couple of episodes ago, talking about the president's executive order on customer experience.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When you think about past performance, I see it as a linear chain of activity. If you start at the end on the citizen-facing customer experience demands and expectations that have been laid out by the president, move one step upstream, and now these are the organizations, departments, missions, and functional areas that have to deliver that customer experience. If firms, companies, government contractors want to know what is required of them, go look at that downstream customer experience that needs to be delivered and start leaning into that. Even, and I love your comment, Mike, about at the kickoff, you may not know. That is true. You may not know the specifics, but that customer experience that's at the end, when it's citizens facing, when it's time to deliver, if you can help your customers lean into that, you're well down the way of providing exceptional value and earning credible past performance, delivering on credible past performance. So you don't have to, in my opinion, you don't have to have all the answers yet,
right,
but there are some breadcrumbs to success that you can follow the breadcrumbs. And if you follow the breadcrumbs, especially in a customer experience space, you can bring that value upstream and start delivering on that.
If I can, before you jump in, one thing that I always try to remind everyone, whether vendor, government, whatever, I always used to say, remember, you're the citizen, you're the taxpayer.
Yeah.
So put yourself in perspective. Mike's a veteran. He knows what he would expect as a veteran from a VA, yeah, right? My mother is retired. I know what she expects out of Social Security. And people think that's simplistic, but it's not. We are citizens. We are taxpayers. We are the customer. So we're serving ourselves, and we need to be thinking from that perspective. I always think from that perspective. I don't look at it like I'm here and they're there. I look at it as, And what if I was in those shoes? I am in those shoes. What are my expectations? So I think that's just an extremely important point. I appreciate you bringing it up. Over to you, Mike.
No, and I would say this, that from my perspective, one of the differences between government and industry is that industry is trying to maximize profit, maximize, but in government, we're trying to maximize benefit, right? We're trying to get as much good services provided to the citizens of the United States, and that's the ultimate objective. And so when, like Will said, if you're focusing on those objectives and you're trying to get the best for the citizens, then you're going to usually get to where you want to be. And I'm a big fan of having metrics in contracts. I'm a big fan of metrics, but there's often a piece that some folks tend to overlook, and that is, what are the objectives of the contract? What are we trying to achieve with this particular contract? And I think it's important in the CPAR space that both government and industry continue to focus on the metrics, yes, but you also have to focus on what are the overarching objectives of this contract, which goes back to this whole citizen experience or customer experience piece, that it allows us to deliver the outcomes that the contract is focused on. The FAR, and it's interesting, I was shocked at how few people have read the part of the FAR that says how CPAR evaluations should be made, how they should be given. What is a marginal? What is a satisfactory? What is a very good? What is exceptional? And how you come about that. If you look at this rating scheme, you could see that you could actually have one individual accomplishments that is so great and that the entire evaluation could be exceptional. And that is typically going to be something that's focused on the outcomes, the contract outcomes. And it might very well be something that significantly enhances the customer experience. If I'm in an IT services environment and the person at their desk has a computer that works, and then a system that works, and has emails and access to the internet and all the other systems, if that's always up and running and things are going well, then you have enhanced that customer experience, but you've also enhanced the ability of those individuals that are being serviced by that network, their ability to bring forward a better service for the citizenry.
Yeah, you and I both are very passionate about metrics. One of the things that I've always pushed for is taking those metrics. I mean, there are the metrics that we have to capture because we're the federal government and we have certain things that we have to report on, and that's fair. But taking those metrics and using them to also measure outcomes, because I believe that ultimately outcomes have to be measured in two ways. One, metrics, objective metrics, because you always want some objectivity as to what are you really accomplishing. Did you make life better in some way, right? Did you speed up the process? Did you deliver more capability? Did you deliver value? Was your customer satisfied? And those things are kind of captured through metrics. But you also want qualitative metrics, right? Because sometimes we might not be able to achieve the ultimate outcome because it wasn't achievable, right? Because it was a lot to go. I mean, world peace, right? Good luck with that, right? If you're going to measure any president of the United States on world peace, game over, see you, bye. Right? Or Congress passing a budget on schedule. I'm sorry, I'm harping on that a little bit. Anyway, but my point on that is that those metrics should lead to some way of measuring that you're getting to that outcome. In other words, not metrics for the sake of metrics. I can't tell you how many times I've looked at metrics in a contract, and I know you and I have had this discussion, and I know Will and I had this discussion. Oh yeah, we're going to count beds. Well, Dan and Nick will buy a cup of coffee. Nobody cares how many. What are we using them for? Are we getting them occupied? How quickly are they being occupied? How quickly are they being vacant? What is the importance of that metric? And how does it tie to that overarching objective and outcome that you seek to achieve? And the outcome ultimately is to do something better for our government, for our citizenry, for the people who use our services, right? And we have to think more in outcome metrics. And I got to tell you, that's probably the most difficult conversation that you have with your employees and the people, when you're trying to pull together the contract, that's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to measure, because also its honesty can scare you, right? Because you might not achieve that objective that you set out to do. But what I always tell people, well, failure is part of success too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not all failures are bad.
Sometimes you fail and sometimes you learn, right?
Exactly.
So Mike, I got a question for you.
Okay.
And this is the opinionated time of the show. Okay.
Oh, we weren't on opinion. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So in my experience, I have seen and witnessed, again, my opinion, a gravitational pull towards satisfactory ratings.
Mm.
Here's what I believe, here's my perception, my belief of why this occurs. Anything below satisfaction, you got to tell a compelling story. You got to put a little work in, okay? Anything above satisfactory, you got to tell a compelling story. You got to put a little work in. So it's this ease of process that tends to gravitate towards a satisfactory rating. It's the easiest in to get the block check. As an advisor in the GovCon space, how are you advising clients, government contractors to fight for things outside of the halo effect of a satisfactory rating?
Yeah, Will, you're spot on with that. And we have been, we at GovCon RX, we were actually working with OFPP, and we put on a number of industry forums where we had representatives from different industry associations come into different forums, and we worked with separate associations, and we would have them go through a series of discussions and topics around the CPARS process and how it can be enhanced and be improved. And one of the things that they said is that they have a difficult time with some agencies, some contracting shops, where they say there's an unwritten rule that they can't give more than satisfactory. And I said, well, there's a written rule in the FAR that says the basis for how evaluation should be given. So I always had a challenge. I was always challenged with that. But looking at the statistics over the years, there has been a continuous increase in the number of satisfactories, and the very good and exceptionals are actually going down at a similar rate. And if you look at satisfactory, and I will understand that the majority of contracts would be rated satisfactory. Sometimes there's just not an opportunity to go beyond satisfactory, right? You ask for a box, you deliver the box, it works, good to go. Nothing exceptional happened, nothing out of the ordinary happened. And so I get that. But there are situations where, things are the contract performed above and beyond. There are some times when, unbeknownst to the government, some things happened in the supply chain where the contractor went through exceptional means to overcome those. There are some times when there is a particular shortage of a particular labor category, and the labor pool is being pulled in a certain direction, and you had to pull the opposite direction of that labor pool, in order to have people on the contract who are knowledgeable and a unique capability sometimes to get the work done. So those types of scenarios are the types of things that we ask our clients to focus on. Where did you go above and beyond? And then let's get back to the original conversation of enhancing the communication. If we go in early on and talk to the government about what is exceptional, then you have far more opportunities throughout the period of performance to provide examples of exceptional performance, to demonstrate that exceptional performance, to deliver that exceptional performance in a way that the government wants it. My wife uses the example that you can be the best, you can make the best steak in the world, but if your customers are vegetarian, it's not going to help, right?
Yeah.
So you have to deliver what the customer really needs and what the customer really thinks is exceptional performance and very good. The other thing I'll tell you is that what contractors see about satisfactory is only about 7% of scores are below satisfactory. So if you're getting something that's below satisfactory, then you're really in a bad way.
You earned it, huh?
Yeah, well, so my issue with satisfactory, if I could eliminate that word, I would just eliminate it. And I'll tell you why, because what satisfactory means is I'm not going to make any effort to tell you whether you did good or bad, right? The other thing about satisfactory is, to me, it's mediocre. And what I would say to my government counterparts out there, my colleagues in government, stop and think about something. What would you say if somebody said your performance was mediocre? You still want to know why. So I would argue that giving a satisfactory rating doesn't really minimize your responsibility.
Right.
Because if I'm going to rate you as mediocre, I think I should tell you why I think you're mediocre. Because shame on me if I'm not looking for you to be the best. When I picked you up, when I hired you, when I evaluated and selected you, I did it because I thought you would. I like to think I did it because you bring the best.
Yep.
So why aren't you bringing me the best? That's the way I look at it, right?
I love it.
It's about the challenge.
You didn't select that contractor because you thought they were the most average?
They're going to be the most mediocre. Or the best.
The most mediocre.
Right? I
need somebody in here really mediocre to help me to do.
Yeah, I don't want you to be really good. Right?
Yeah.
You can be bad or mediocre, but and I don't select employees that way, right? So I'm disappointed if I have a mediocre employee. That doesn't mean they're bad, but it means I got to help them step it up because I want better performance. So I would challenge our counterpart, and I know it's work, it's hard, I get it, but delivering that contract is important. If you took the time, the energy to write that contract, we don't write these contracts just for writing a contract's sake. There is a pot of gold at the end of that rainbow that we're trying to deliver to somebody, right? We're providing a service. There's a veteran at the end of that. There's an elderly person. There is a human being that is going to be affected by that product or that service. God forbid I deliver bad bullets to my agents and somebody gets killed. This is the way I look at this world, right? It is about take care of people. So I don't want mediocre. That's why I don't like LPTA, but I won't go off on that.
Don't get me started, Soraya. Don't get me started.
Because I'm not doing half-assed. You like LPTA? Is that what you were going to say, Mike?
Don't get me started.
Can I come back and talk about LPTA?
Well, but I'm passionate about these things that this is affecting people's lives, what we're deciding here. So, and I want these companies to be good. And if the company didn't do a good job for me, I want to understand why they didn't do a good job for me. And I want to tell them what they can do like an employee. Because when you go to your next job, I don't want people to know you used to work for me and you suck. Okay. I'd like to think that I helped you improve some way or another, right? And same thing goes with companies. And the bad companies got to get weeded out. The bad companies that aren't performing, that aren't doing the job, don't have the capability, can't figure it out. Well, I don't want them in the system. Go, bye, see you.
Yeah,
Finito, out of business. I don't even want them working on the commercial side. I just don't want them, right? And it's the same thing with folks that don't want to work. If you don't want to work, then go someplace else. I want people that want to be productive, that really try and want to develop. So past performance to me is about developing, but it's also about current performance. Because if you understand what you're doing well or not doing well, then you know how to adjust as you go. And believe you me, my experience has been that folks really do want to do well. The people that work the contract are not the ones that are making the profit. So they actually care. They take pride and they really want to deliver.
And Soraya,
Mike.
we're at that point. We're at that point.
He does this every time.
Right when we get worked up.
Right when I get worked up, right?
So we're at that point where we want to give nuggets. So I'd like to offer our guests the first nuggets. Yes, Mike, you got a nugget for the community, whatever facet, whatever way you want to point it, or if it's holistic, what's a nugget in the past performance space for our community?
I think we need to stop looking at past performance CPARs as being a scorecard after the end of performance and look at it as a tool to improve performance and enhance contract outcomes and enhance the mission going forward. If you're communicating throughout the performance period, and it doesn't have to be overly burdensome communication, but if you're communicating on what we need on the government side and what we're experiencing on the contractor side and how we can deliver better, then the outcome is going to be better. The CPAR rating is going to be better. The government, the contractor, and more importantly, the citizens are going to be served better. And that's my pearl of wisdom.
Awesome.
Well, and wise it is. I wholeheartedly agree with you. As you were talking, I wrote down CPARs is a continuing dialogue. That's what you're really saying. You're saying it should be a continuation of the dialogue. What I will say is this. CPARs is a tool, and there are other tools out there. I saw a demo of a tool that's being used, at least at the local level, product called Procurated, and it's about past performance of manufacturing companies primarily. And it's kind of like I'm going to say kind of like almost like a crowdsourced tool. You put in, you get to use it. You use it for free. It doesn't cost the government anything. And then you input performance information. To me, that's what CPARs is really about. It's a tool to get information so we can learn from one another, so that we can share information. And some of the objectives that we undertook at DHS, the CPARs initiative to try to improve how we get data out of the tool using AI, is to make that tool more useful. So my commentary is, let's not create work for ourselves. Let's use the tools that are at our disposal, and let's make that tool useful for ourselves. So, Mike's point about let's do those self-assessments, let's use CPARs as a continuing dialogue to deal not only with past performance, but with current performance. Let's use the tools. Let's make those tools better. Collectively, we can do that. That's my pearl.
I love it. I love it. And my nugget, I want to focus my nugget towards industry. And that message to industry is, do not leave CPARs to chance. Pin the rose on somebody that is their responsibility to move those CPARs, move those self-assessments, build the relationships, have the communications that allow you to be effectively evaluated in your CPAR. Someone's got to be responsible for this. If you leave it to chance, you'll show up with assessments that are not reflective of your actual performance. So do not leave it to chance. And with that, I think we want to say thank you, Michael B. Smith, for joining us today. If anyone wants to get in contact with you after this, please give us a couple of seconds on how people can reach out and get in contact.
Sure, it's easy. Just email me at mbsmith@access-gov.com.
All right.
Or you can call me, 703-881-1574.
All right. All right.
Okay, Mike, I just want to, again, thank you for joining us today, but I also want to thank you for your many years of service, and certainly my appreciation for you, not only as a human being and a professional, but also as a good friend. And my love to your wife, who also happens to be a professional in our business. And I'll probably drag her in to talk a little bit about policy. I was like teasing her about telling me the difference between a provision and a clause.
Good stuff. Good
Yeah,
stuff.
this is wonderful. Thank you again. Thank you. And
Thank
Will,
you.
it's always a
Thanks,
pleasure
Mike.
to be with you.
And thanks for having me.
Okay.
Appreciate
And with that, folks, we're out. Be well.
We are out. See y'all next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.